Hey guys, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, the official home of power mining analysis. Another big episode in store for you today. We're going to be covering the recent news from IREN, CleanSpark, and some of the key macro developments or catalysts in the Bitcoin mining space. Before we get into it, take a second, smash the like button, guys. Big help to myself and the channel. Anthony absolutely loves it. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join and let us know in the comment section below if you're holding either of these two stocks and how you're feeling about the sector in general. With that being said, let's get into today's video. Okay guys, Wednesday afternoon, another very exciting day in the Bitcoin mining space. We're going to be talking about the recent news just out from IREN and CleanSpark this morning, in addition to some of the bullish macro catalysts. Before we get into that though, Anthony, Bitcoin itself, we did our podcast yesterday. We said it was on the move, creeping up close to 92,000. Lo and behold, this morning, up over 92.5, and we've now completely come out of that dip or ditch that we were in over the weekend.
Yeah, we're sort of like holding in that 93,000 mark there. It did go above 93,000 when I woke up this morning, but I'm in the Far East. I'm about 14 hours ahead of you, Bryce. So it's holding that zone now, and there seems to be a lot of positivity around Bitcoin. Again, we're trying to find the negativity to give you guys an understanding as why some of these drops are occurring, but we're having trouble finding. Please, if you see something, put it into the chat, and we'll use it on the next podcast. But we're only seeing positive news at the moment. We know it's volatile as an asset class, but there was no sort of like major understanding as why it dipped from 91 all the way down to nearly 80,000 at the lowest point earlier or later last week. Sorry.
Yeah, it's a head scratcher for sure, Anthony. We'll come on to some of the macro news in a second here, specifically Vanguard, because as you say, we really can't find a lot of negative headlines. The miners themselves, off to a reasonable start today. We have some recovery out of ABTC and IREN, which got hit pretty hard yesterday. We'll talk about both of those in a second. BitZero, you can see we actually have the CEO and Kevin O'Leary on tomorrow for their inaugural podcast. So make sure you set your reminders for that one. Anyone else on the list here stand out or catch your attention?
No. I mean, you've already highlighted the two that had sort of like two of the biggest drops yesterday. ABTC and IREN were covered yesterday when they were in the red. Obviously, the announcement by IREN for the convertible notes and the at the market offering to basically pay back the original convertible notes. And then ABTC, we had clarification. So we did actually say on the podcast yesterday that we believed it was an unlocking day, and we were proved to be right on that there. Matt Prusak kindly responded to us and also put out a nice tweet to us to emphasize that this is one of the first unlocking dates, but actually just to focus on the company hasn't changed at all. It still has the balance of Bitcoin, has all the miners, it's got 25 exahash, and everything they're doing there is to deliver a great service. So as I say, make sure on all these companies that you are doing your own due diligence. We're not here to tell you which stocks to buy. We're just here to highlight when there are changes in the prices, when there's some fundamental analysis to cover. But really, it's down to yourselves. When you make a choice to buy or to sell stocks or not to do anything, it's down to yourselves. As I say, we're not here to give any guidance on that. We never give any price predictions because, to be honest, Bryce, we haven't got a clue what the price is going to be tomorrow or next week, never mind next year.
No, we don't. And to Matt Prusak's defense, he actually came on the channel, did the ABTC interview, and talked about this unlocking period, very similar to what we saw with the CoreWeave unlock, which we covered extensively as well. So that's another great reason to catch up on some of these videos or interviews. There's a lot of nuggets in there that may give you kind of some heads up or foresight into the market. Now, the other one I wanted to talk about, or I guess catch up on, yesterday we came out with the story around Vanguard. They've now allowed their clients to start purchasing Bitcoin ETFs through the Vanguard platform. You reported yesterday, Anthony, over $1 billion of activity in the first 30 minutes. It looks like that was just scratching the surface.
Yeah, so they've announced today that by the end of the day, trading volume has surpassed $5.1 billion. And let's just put that into context. They're having to buy Bitcoin because this is a Bitcoin ETF. And when clients purchase the ETF, then the investment bank has to go out there and buy the Bitcoin, because there's nothing else you can support the ETF with. Nothing's as moves as quickly or as volatile as Bitcoin. And if you then calculate the amount of Bitcoin they had to purchase with that 5.1 billion, using yesterday's price, you're looking at probably around about 55,000 Bitcoin. That's more than the second largest corporate holding. Mara Holdings are the second behind Strategy. They've got over 53,000. This is even more than that, and that's in one day. Now, we can look at Bitcoin being mined, and at the moment, for the next 2.5 years, we're going to see 450 Bitcoin mined a day. So when you look at that amount there, that's probably around about 120 days of production that Vanguard traded in one day. 120 days, and that's 120 days of if it was being sold. We know that the miners, some of the miners are hodling Bitcoin, selling part of it to cover operational and capital costs, but they're not selling everything every day. So this is going to be, the catalyst. Again, now we'll start seeing again, obviously, that shortage of supply, increased demand. Where they're going to get it from? I'm not selling mine, Bryce. I don't know about you.
Not selling mine, and it's a good question. It really puts it in perspective. A single day's worth of purchases eclipsing all of Mara's production as the biggest miner in the world for the last 5+ years or whatever it is. So the demand is real. Obviously nice to see that Vanguard has changed their tune a little bit in terms of what's allowed for their investment portfolio. We also saw they're now recommending up to 1 to 4% allocation in those portfolios. So quite a shift or pivot, which we've seen a number of times in this space. Another nice little shift or pivot over in your neck of the woods, Anthony, or your regular neck of the woods. The UK, you've a lot of times brought up the fact that maybe they're a little bit behind in terms of adoption legislation. Seems like they're taking at least a step in the right direction.
Yeah, it certainly looks that way. And the UK have just passed a new law to officially recognise Bitcoin and crypto as property. Now, I can tell you something from they might not have been recognising it before today, but they've certainly been recognising it from a tax position, because Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs Office have been putting out lots of literature about making sure that those people who have crypto, when the transaction occurs in terms of selling the crypto, there's possibly a capital gains transaction that needs to be met as well. So, whether they were declaring whatever asset type Bitcoin was, they were all over it from the tax position, because they know that, again, many people in the UK have been buying crypto via a number of exchanges. The challenge we've had in the UK is not many of the banks will allow you to transfer to an exchange. That's really you think that's archaic, because you seem to think it's your money in the bank, and if you want to transfer it somewhere else, you should be allowed to do that. And yes, they can put the risks of doing that on the actual transaction, and you have to agree to acknowledge the risks. But I actually opened an account about 2 years ago, and when I set out what I was doing in terms of education, not even buying Bitcoin, but just as an education for the company, the account got closed within 2 days, and they wouldn't give me a reason. They just said it didn't fall in line with their own culture or beliefs. And I had to go to another bank and open an account, and that bank's been extremely supportive. So this is where we are in the UK. But this is good. This is good news today, and hopefully, I think the fact that the US is taking such a leading role in terms of where we're going with Bitcoin, with the Genesis Act, and the fact that the president wants to have Bitcoin as a strategic reserve. And as we'll see over this next sort of 6 to 12 months, how that interacts there. And once that actually gets passed, if it gets passed, it's looking like it's going to be game over for many other countries, because there's a lot of countries out there that are pegged to the US dollar. I've just spent a week in the United Emirates, in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. The dirham, which is the national currency there, that is pegged to the dollar. So they move in sync together. I'm also now in Hong Kong. The Hong Kong dollar is pegged to the US dollar. So if the US bring in the strategic reserve, a lot of these countries where their currency is pegged will probably have to do something similar. And if you think about the UAE, I mean, we talk about America. I would say Dubai is probably the capital in terms of crypto around the world, that because of the tax regime there, I mean, many, many countries, and you can understand if you buying an asset class and the asset gains in value, then you pay capital gains tax. And in the same way, if you make a loss, you're allowed to recover the losses, in future transactions, so you can have the balancing effect. But in the likes of the UAE and many other countries out there now, they're offering sort of like no capital gains tax on crypto. And some of them are even offering no income tax on salaries and very low corporation tax on companies trying to register there. So lots of incentives to get companies to move to these locations. But it's just an indication that this is really shaking things up, and there's a lot of things, innovative things happening out there to support crypto in the space that we're in.
There certainly are, yeah. And you just mentioned the Genius Act, another one, the Crypto Market Structure Bill. We just got the SEC chair live on Fox stating that they're working on that right now. It's about to pass soon. And the president's son, Eric Trump, which we talked about yesterday on the channel, he's come out with a very bullish endorsement as well. So whether you're talking about your side of the pond over here in North America and Dubai, it seems like all of these countries are really moving in one direction in terms of adoption. And despite maybe the pullback we saw with ABTC yesterday, Eric Trump's conviction has not wavered.
Yeah, and I've been fortunate to see Eric talk live. I was at the Bitcoin Asia conference earlier this year, and managed to meet up with Asher Ganut, who's the CEO of Hut 8, and he was there with Eric on a panel on the stage. So very well supported at that conference. And to be honest with you, as I said in the podcast, we're trying to find the news at the moment that's actually, derogatory to Bitcoin. There's very little out there, and it's all very positive. If these ETFs are constantly buying, that MicroStrategy now have 650,000 Bitcoin on their balance sheet. The last time I saw BlackRock, I think it was heading towards 800,000. And, a lot of these ETFs that originally got approved back in January 2024 are growing their size of Bitcoin holdings because their customers are buying the ETFs. And the only way you can, back them side transaction is to buy the Bitcoin itself. And so I think, from what Eric's saying there, he's only just saying from a common sense approach, because there's too much buying at the moment. Yes, we've seen some of the older whales have been selling a little bit in the 100,000 mark there. We saw that massive sale through Galaxy. I think it was 80,000 Bitcoin. And, that made somebody an immediate billionaire. And bear in mind, I think they only paid, $150,000 for the 80,000 to start with. So it's life-changing numbers, and I don't really blame people for doing that. That means there's 80,000 more Bitcoin on the market for people to buy. I mean, that's the challenge. And going back to the stocks today, with that unlocking that ABTC that's occurred there, that's putting more shares in liquidity. So it gives investors the opportunity to buy more shares now, because there was a very small amount of shares available. And hence, I think the stock did rally on the fact that people were trying to get hold of these shares, but there was such a small amount because the majority of the shares at the time were held by the initial investors. Now that some of those investors have been selling, it gives us more liquidity to buy. And I think the same with Bitcoin as well. When you've got a resource that the demand is there for it and there isn't quite the supply, it creates that volatility in the price action there. So let's see how Eric his statements stand up in the next month or so there. But I think I'd be on the side of, it's certainly going to increase in price. We're looking at it now. Even in the last week, it's recovered its ground, and hopefully we can see it get past into the 100,000 again and settle above that line there. And from that position, I think a lot more people will be happier.
I do too, yeah, and it'll be interesting to see if this 4-year cycle mantra has actually broken, or if we're still going to see that type of cyclicality in the market. Now, focusing in onto the more miner specific news, we just talked about ABTC. We mentioned IREN had a fairly significant think maybe 15% or 11% pullback yesterday. We're going to come on to IREN in a second, but CleanSpark actually came out with their production report for the month of November. One of the few companies still putting one out, and the first one to come out for the month. You can see the impacts of difficulty immediately. Operational hash rate increasing, overall Bitcoin production decreasing. Why don't you walk us through the highlights here?
Yeah, and just remember there is only 30 days in November as opposed to 31 days in October. And that one day does make a difference. If you look at the daily amount of Bitcoin mined, you're around about the 19 and a half in both periods, 19.6 in November, 19.7 in October. But you're quite right to mention the average operational hash rate did increase by 2%. I always look at the Bitcoin mine per exahash to give me an understanding of what's really happening, because that is absolute there. And if you think about October, for every exahash they had, they were able to produce 13.1 Bitcoin, whereas in November it's gone down by 6% to 12.4. This is the difficulty. This is what we've been talking about now for probably 5 or 6 months, because as we've been reporting it every week or every couple of weeks, we've seen that difficulty change significantly, and there hasn't been many opportunities for the difficulty to reduce. The global hash rate's been increasing, making it more difficult for miners to actually produce Bitcoin, and it does impact their production. But CleanSpark, having one of the highest hash rates, they've got a total energized hash rate of 50 exahash, and as I say, the operational hash rate for November was very good, 47.4. That enabled them to produce 587 Bitcoin, so just shy of 600. If you look at the efficiency for CleanSpark at 16.07 joules a terahash, that's the second most efficient fleet on the market, just behind IREN at 15 joules a terahash. And if you think about the machines that are coming onto the market now from Auradine, from Bitdeer, from Bitmain, from MicroBT, you can see the latest models are coming in with less than 15 joules a terahash. So if those miners that are wanting to continue to grow their mining fleet, and actually CleanSpark's one of those, they do have this dual strategy. They are looking to grow the fleet and looking to direct some of that power that they've just purchased in Texas towards HPC. They might be buying some of these more efficient mining machines to go into their sites, and therefore, able to use less power to mine Bitcoin. And that's one way they can produce a better margin. So reducing that efficiency with newer machines will get them to a point where they'll be making even bigger margins. Now, in terms of selling Bitcoin, CleanSpark have been doing that, selling part of their production for the last few months to cover operational and capital expenditure. November was no different there. 565 of their 587 were sold. That meant they added 22 to their hodl. And if you look at the hodl for November, that's now increased to 13,054. The value of hodl, though, is interesting there. It's actually gone down by 17%, and that's because the price of Bitcoin massively reduced from the end of October, where it was 109,000, to the end of November, where I think it was closer to 91, 92,000. So a big swing in the Bitcoin price as the hodl at that point in time, and that hodl, even at today's price, will be very similar to where it is there. Now, CleanSpark share price has also reduced over that period, along with another members. Remember, we talked about the monthly position on a lot of these miners. Share price over the last month has been fairly dire for most of the mining companies. I think you said yesterday an average of about 30%. So you can see from November 25, Bitcoin hodl value to market capitalization represents 31%, and in October it only represented 27%. So obviously, we'd like the Bitcoin price and the share prices to increase, but there's been some, obviously a little bit of correlation. That Bitcoin price has come down, the share prices of these mining has come down as well. So with both happening that way, then the hodl value to market cap has increased slightly, because the market value of the companies has dropped far quicker than the actual value of Bitcoin.
Yeah, good point you bring up there. A couple other key bullet points on the list. They actually increased their overall power by 125 megawatts in the TVA area. So this is Tennessee Valley Authority, similar to ERCOT, but obviously operating in Tennessee. This is in addition to that 285 megawatt Texas purchase, bringing their total contracted power up to 1.45 megawatts. They also talk about their convertible note and the share purchase or share repurchase program, 10.9% of overall shares taken back off the market from the company. So you can definitely see they're trying to make some moves here. It'll be interesting to see this next announcement. We know Matt Schultz talked about their Subner partnership on their earnings call and really seeing what they do with these sites. Now, next up, we've got IREN. We talked about the news yesterday, two different press releases yesterday, two different ones today, one talking about common shares, one talking about a convertible note. I'll let you walk through the pricing here. But again, from what we can tell, Anthony, this is looking very bullish for IREN.
Yeah, we spoke about the raising of this sort of offering to basically raise capital to buy back those original convertible notes from 29 and 30. And we can see today that they've announced they're going to have a direct offering of just under 40 million ordinary shares, 39.7 million ordinary shares at a price of $41.12 per share, to a limited number of purchases. So it looks like they've already got the buyers in place for that there. Now, we talked yesterday about the conversion price of the 2029 convertible, which is 1364, and the 2030 convertible at 1681. So they'll hopefully be able to use the proceeds of that there, which is, in my simple calculation there, around about $1.6 billion to buy those convertibles back there. And then they've got the focus then to deliver the new convertibles, which you can go through now, Bryce.
Yeah, so essentially what they've done, they've sold around 40 million shares into the market at $41. They've used part of that money to go out, purchase these convertible notes back so that these people cannot convert into shares down the road. So that's one component. Then they've come out with a second round of convertibles. So these ones are dated out to 2032 and 2033. Now they're going to be issued on December 8th at a 25% premium to market price. So considering IREN is trading, say, $41, $42, $43 at that point, you add 25% to that, you're well into the low 50s. So these convertibles, not only have they been pushed out 3 years down the road, but the conversion price is now, instead of being in the mid-teens, in the mid-50s. So again, a very bullish move, to me, indicating they anticipate value creation or share price increase to occur. Now, the other thing they've done, again, in my opinion, quite bullish, is entered a capped call transaction with a cap price 100% premium to current market price, coming in at 82.24. So that essentially limits any dilution up until that point. So for me, again, a strong indication that management suspects their share price will at some point be trading up close to that $80 range. Again, this gives them more capital. We talked about the fact yesterday, this CSP model is very CapEx intensive.
Yeah, absolutely. And, with these two convertibles, they do have the opportunity for up to 150 million aggregate principal amount on the 2033 and the 2032 convertible there, giving them a further 300 million, the offering taking it to a 2.3 billion in total, which goes towards their capital requirements to deliver that contract with Microsoft that we talked about in more detail yesterday's podcast.
So to us, this comes across as a very positive move. It increases the balance sheet, it pushes out those converts, but it appears not everyone was happy about the news.
Yeah, apparently Jim Cramer's come out on X today and saying the year of magical investing is back. Sell any company now that is doing a financing, and he actually even mentions IREN. He's mentioned them quite a few times on his show in the last few weeks. He's talking about these companies having big insider selling. Stay close here. No one else can call this stuff, but I have a 1999 2000 encyclopedia in my head from when they still use them. Investors must be protected from predators. I don't know how much he really understands about IREN, but I can assume very little because we've been following the company for the last 4 years. And I've got a probably a little bit better understanding than Jim Cramer on that particular subject there. And I don't think there's anything untoward about what they're doing now. I mean, this is a massive deal with Microsoft, and that's just 10% of the power. Wait till we start seeing the rest of the power being converted into contracts. HPC, we know it's not a cheap strategy. You've got to go and buy. These GPUs are expensive. We talked yesterday; they could be up to $80,000 per GPU. Remember, mining machines are nowhere near that price, but GPUs for this strategy are really expensive. And then you've got to think about where these GPUs sit. They're in cooling systems, which is extremely expensive to put together as well. And then you've got the infrastructure there. Maybe, not massively more expensive than some of the mining facilities, because, companies like IREN and Cipher and a few of the other ones actually build really good facilities. They're not using effectively containers to host mining machines. They're building proper facilities. And so to convert the infrastructure, that's the shell of the building, in readiness for HPC, doesn't take as much refurbishment to do that. It's what goes on inside the building that costs a lot of money. These cooling systems are extremely expensive. The GPUs are expensive. To get that sort of service in place, we know that IREN have got to raise significant amounts. So they've been given an opportunity from Microsoft to take an advance of 1.9 billion. Yes, they'll be paying that back during the period, but to have that advance there, that will help them. This 2.3 billion here will help them. Just over 1 billion on the balance sheet as at the end of September, that will grow there. But I know from yesterday's podcast, we went through some of the numbers and they still need more money now, but they're getting closer to that total what they're going to need to deliver this contract. And we know that all the mining companies that have got contracts, once they've signed a deal, the next focus has always been on, we've got to now sort of get our finances in order, get the capital raised. And, we've had Patrick Fleury on the podcast a couple of times. And when you've got a CFO on the podcast who really understands this business, really has gone out there and every contract they've signed, within a week of the contract, they've come out and said, this is how we're going to deliver it financially. And they've raised everything they need for their contracts with Core 42 and with Fluid Stack. And the same can be said for Cipher. IREN are just doing exactly the same now. They're getting all their ducks in a row. They're building that capital to get ready for this contract there. And remember, this is the first stepping stone. There's a number of stepping stones to deliver the remaining 90% of the power from Childress and from Sweetwater over these next 3, 4, 5 years. And there's a lot more capital to be raised. So I would take what Jim Cramer says with a pinch of salt. Remember, this is the guy that was, I'm in Bitcoin, I'm out Bitcoin, I'm in Bitcoin, I'm out Bitcoin. He's changed. He's tuned so many times that I've actually stopped watching CNBC. I used to watch it 5 years ago, pretty much on a daily basis, but the last 4 years, I haven't really switched on very much at all. I picked this up from a bit of a social media tweet this morning and thought it was interesting. Again, another announcement.
Yeah, you're quite right there, Anthony, and I don't really understand where Jim Cramer expects this money to come from. We talked about the portion of debt versus equity. These companies need to raise money, and as you've said, we've seen this time and time again in the space. So we'll let him have his thoughts. We have ours. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below on both IREN and CleanSpark, along with some of the macro headlines we covered. If you're still watching at this point, hit the like button. Feel free to subscribe. We'll see you back here tomorrow for our BitZero interview, along with Kevin O'Leary. Thanks so much for watching.